Welcome to Chillin' Ghost Stories, where the scariest tales come to life in the dead of night. Tonight, we venture into the eerie legends of Thailand, a land haunted by vengeful spirits, black magic, and chilling apparitions. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to face your deepest fears. Let's begin. Chapter 11. Blood Talisman of Vengeance.
Time passed quickly. One day, at the lonely wooden house on the edge of the forest, a man in dirty clothes struggled to reach the tightly shut door, calling out desperately, "Master Oi! Master Oi!" After the calls came the thunderous pounding on the wooden door. It took a long while before the door slowly opened. A man dressed in black appeared, his fierce face hidden behind a bushy beard. Upon seeing him, the elderly couple quickly knelt down, bowing repeatedly while sobbing and pleading, "Master Oi! Please help us. Our long-awaited child has been taken by those demons. Only you can help us now. Please." The man's expression remained unchanged as he asked in a deep, hoarse voice, "Is it the general and his wife?" "Yes, it's them. They've taken many children from our village. We know those children will surely be killed, their intestines removed for dark magic. Please save our child. We'll pay any price." The man quickly helped them up, trying to calm them so he could ask further, "How do you know the children will have their intestines removed for magic? We have a niece who works as a maid in their mansion. She revealed this to us long ago but didn't dare speak openly. But now, our child has been taken. Please save our child. Only your magic can punish those two evil people." The man pondered for a while before saying, "Very well. I will help you take revenge. But I need the birth date of the maid who works there. It will be very useful to me." The couple rejoiced upon hearing this and profusely thanked the man. After they left, the man named Oi returned to his candlelit room, clutching the paper with the maid's birth date, muttering, "It's time. Brother, I will avenge you." Oi sat cross-legged atop a red cloth laid across the floor. The four corners were covered with intricate spells, pinned down with silver nails. In front of him was a low table with a statue of a fierce deity in the center. Around it were many jars of various sizes, all carefully sealed with lids marked with black ink spells. Oi clasped his hands before his chest, murmuring prayers and bowing to the deity statue. Then he placed a clay effigy with the maid's information paper attached to it before him, continuing to chant. His hands now moved constantly above the effigy as he needed to connect it with the maid inside the mansion. After a long while, Oi opened a jar near him and pulled out a very large sewer rat. Without hesitation, he brought it straight to his mouth and bit through the animal's neck. Fresh red blood spurted out as the rat writhed in pain, trying to escape. Oi held it firmly, forcing the blood from its neck to flow evenly over the effigy, then returned the rat to its jar. It writhed in pain but did not die, quickly consuming the red, sticky grains inside the jar. The rat seemed quite accustomed to this routine, knowing the strange grains would help it survive. Oi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, interlaced his fingers, and continued chanting, his pace increasingly rapid. The blood-soaked effigy suddenly emitted white smoke. Elsewhere, the sleeping maid jolted awake, her eyes snapping open, though her body remained still. Her gaze gradually became vacant, and after a while, her eyes slowly closed as if nothing had happened. Humph. No matter how well you hide your identity, you cannot hide everything connected to you. Just wait. Oi muttered before the now blackened effigy, his eyes filled with hatred. Early the next morning, as usual, the maid brought water to the general and his wife's room. After serving them, she resumed cleaning the room. When the couple left, the girl quietly collected the hair strands scattered on the bed. Strangely, she could only find the general's short hair but no long strands at all. Could it be that the general's wife never shed any hair? This was very odd. The girl had to hide the short hair and take it back to her room. By nightfall, a raven was already perched outside her window. When no one was around, the girl gave the hair to the raven, which carried it away. This continued without anyone in the mansion knowing, including the general and the deity statue in his house. Ploy received the hair from the raven's beak with delight and immediately took it to his spell room. Still on the cloth covered with intricate spells, he sat cross-legged. On the table was a lemon already soaking in a thick red liquid resembling blood. Ploy cut off the 4 corners of the lemon, then used a needle to insert 3 of the general's hairs into the center. He opened a jar and took out a cobra, skillfully cut it open with a knife, and extracted its greenish-black gallbladder, placing it in a mortar made of human skull. From a second jar, he poured out a light pink liquid that seemed to be extracted from a placenta. Using a pestle made of animal bone, Ploy ground the mixture thoroughly, then poured it evenly over the lemon. He clasped his hands, muttering incantations and bowing to the deity statue. Within moments, his entire body began to shake violently. A red mist rose thickly from the lemon and drifted out into the sky. In his small room, General Corasorn, who had been intimate with his wife, suddenly felt his body burning like fire, especially in his stomach region. A tingling sensation was eating away at his body. Sweat poured out as if he were bathing, causing his wife beside him great concern. "What's wrong with you?" I. The general grimaced, unable to speak. His skin paled. Corasorn used his strength to vomit forcefully, black blood splattering all over the floor. Seeming to realize something, Corasorn struggled to leave the bed, staggering toward a room at the end of the house, ignoring his worried wife's questions behind him. The room at the end of the house was forbidden. Normally no one was allowed near it except Corasorn. The room was very dark, with a small shrine in the deepest part, upon which sat a statue of a fierce deity, half human and half beast, bearing its fangs, looking terrifying. Behind its back was a pair of wings spreading as if about to take flight. Corasorn dragged himself there and collapsed on the floor, but quickly sat up. He knew the person using magic against him had only just begun. If he didn't find a way to counter it quickly, he would die. He bit his finger to draw blood, wrote on a piece of paper, and clasped it in his palm. While kneeling and bowing, he prayed to the deity statue, begging for its blessing. Indeed, the eyes of the deity statue glowed red in an eerie way. Seeing the deity's agreement, Corasorn immediately burned the paper in his hand and mixed it into a cup of water taken from the shrine. When finished, he drank the holy water quickly. The burning sensation in his stomach subsided significantly. Only then did Corasorn recover his senses, wiping away the sweat on his forehead. He gritted his teeth, his eyes bulging. "So someone dares to curse me? Fine. I'll show you what real magic is." With those words, Corasorn squeezed blood from his finger to drip into a basin of clear water. His mouth mumbled incantations, and after a while, the water's surface rippled then became still again, revealing the face of a man with bushy hair and beard. Seeing his enemy, Corasorn didn't seem particularly surprised. Because the only person who dared to use magic against him was this man. Corasorn took down a jar full of larvae and chanted a few spells before grabbing a handful and throwing them straight into the water basin. While I had to go to great lengths to find Corasorn's hair to cast a spell, Corasorn only needed to use his own blood to counter the spell against him. Because now, the two men were connected. After some turbulence, the water surface became calm again, still showing Oy struggling against the insects wrapping around him. All kinds of venom took turns stinging the tall, dark body of Oy, causing his face to swell and his whole body to shake in pain. Oy suppressed the pain, trying to chant spells and then burned a pile of powder. This substance didn't burn but released a thick smoke that enveloped him. The insects feared the smoke, some fled while others were killed, falling to the ground in droves. The situation stabilized, and I knew that Corasorn had discovered him and was counterattacking, but he wasn't afraid. He continued by taking the 3 remaining hairs and approaching a dried corpse displayed in the room. After burning the hairs, the smoke entered the corpse's nostrils. Simultaneously, the corpse's eyes opened wide, but they weren't normal eyes, they were filled with squirming maggots. Oy pried open the mouth, pulled out the corpse's tongue, and used ink to draw very small symbols on it. Then he clasped his hands and began chanting. On the other side, Corasorn, who was monitoring the situation and mumbling his next spell, suddenly found his tongue stiff, unable to produce sounds as he intended. Immediately, the spell he was using lost its effect and backfired, causing him to vomit blood. At the same time, his throat was being squeezed so tightly he could barely breathe. Corasorn clutched his throat, stumbling around the room, trying to reach the shrine. He grabbed a handful of powder, brought it to his nose, and inhaled forcefully. Then he used his nose to blow it out hard, causing the powder to spray outward. However, on the other side, Oy was hit in the face by the strange powder, along with a force that knocked him backward onto the floor. The rope binding the corpse's neck loosened and dropped to the floor. Oy clutched his face in pain. The powder wasn't ordinary, it continuously corroded his face. At this point, he looked no different than a demon disguised as a human. Oy poured holy water over his face to soothe the burning sensation, his eyes blazing with fury. Humph. You're good. Then let's risk our lives together. With those words, Oy reached for a jar teeming with writhing, black-haired caterpillars. Each was as thick as a thumb, with black bristles standing up all over. These were poisonous caterpillars, merely touching them would cause itching like thousands of needles pricking the skin. Their blood, if processed, could break other spells. Oy had no other choice now. He had tried stabbing the corpse with a knife, but it was hard as stone, impossible to penetrate. Perhaps Corasorn's body had been tattooed with many spells, making him impervious to swords and knives. Oy gritted his teeth, grabbed a handful of caterpillars, and put them in his mouth to chew. The pain of thousands of needles tore through his mouth cavity. Blood flowed, mixing with the caterpillar's blood to form a slimy, saliva-filled fluid. He dripped this into a bowl, then collapsed on the floor, using holy water to rinse his mouth. His body was ice cold, shaking rhythmically, his mouth constantly foaming. A feeling of torment penetrated to his very core. This was exactly why Oy had hesitated to use this method earlier. Only now, to kill Corasorn, was he forced to do it. If Corasorn didn't die, then he would be killed. After resting for a while, Oy struggled to his feet. His body had lost much of its strength, but having reached the final step, he couldn't miss this opportunity. Since Corasorn had nothing of his, he couldn't actively attack Oy, he could only counter spells. Oy inhaled deeply, setting the last strands of Corasorn's hair ablaze within the spell cloth before mixing the ashes into the thick, ominous liquid. His mouth continued chanting. His clasped hands and his entire body trembled rhythmically. Cold sweat poured out as if he were bathing. His strength had reached its limit, but the flame of hatred hadn't diminished, on the contrary, it further compelled Oy to kill Corasorn. Oy stopped chanting and poured the cup of liquid directly into the corpse's mouth. A series of hissing sounds emerged, accompanied by white smoke filling the room. Oy himself vomited blood, soaking his black clothes. But he felt no pain, only laughed triumphantly. On the other side, Corasorn, who had been monitoring the situation, suddenly felt as if his body was on fire. His whole body went limp, and he collapsed on the ground, writhing in pain like a roasted worm. His mouth continuously spewed a black, slimy substance. When Corasorn tried to use magic, he discovered he had no magic left. At this moment, he was no different from an ordinary person. What was happening? Corasorn went mad, rushing to the deity statue, begging, "Please help me. Help me." But despite his pleas and incantations, there was no effect. The slimy substance only poured out more and more, soaking the front half of his body. At this point, Corasorn was truly panicking. He couldn't believe that Oy was so powerful. He didn't know that to reach this moment, had endured much, traveling everywhere to collect poisonous insects for his craft. In the wooden house, was smiling with satisfaction. He knew how Corasorn was suffering now. He held a knife in his hand, bringing it to his tongue for a light lick. The moment of revenge was right before his eyes. Oy slowly approached the corpse, raising the knife to its chest, right at the position of the heart. Oy smiled victoriously, die. The knife penetrated through the clothes and into the flesh. Corasorn screamed in pain. Blood oozed from his left chest. It was over. He died because he underestimated his enemy. The window burst open, startling Oy. His eyes widened when he saw a woman's head floating there, extending her intestines toward him and wrapping them tightly around his neck. It was Ploy. She gently strangled Oy to death without giving him time to say a word. His tall body crashed to the floor. Ploy smiled, gently pulled out the knife that was partially embedded in the corpse, then cut open Oy's stomach and began to enjoy her prey. It seems the intestines of priests are very useful. Ploy licked her lips, knocked over several candles, and flew back to her own body. The flames quickly engulfed the wooden house, burying the fierce battle that had just occurred. Ploy ran into the forbidden room, supporting Corasorn, who was pale from blood loss. He was still barely breathing. Ploy immediately used celestial magic, releasing a beam of light from her palm to heal her husband. Corasorn opened his eyes, saw his beautiful wife before him and the wound healing, then smiled, "Fortunate to have you save me. I truly didn't misjudge you." Suddenly remembering something, Corasorn sat up and looked into the water basin, saying, "I must kill this man. He broke my spell. Please stay calm. He's already dead." Corasorn was surprised, but looking carefully into the water basin, Oy's image was gone, meaning he was truly dead. How did you kill him? Have you forgotten that I possess celestial magic? I used it to sense his location while he was casting spells on you. When I arrived, he was already nearly exhausted. Dealing with someone in that state was very easy. Corasorn smiled, embracing Ploy, "Thank you for saving my life. Because you are my husband, we must help each other." Ploy lowered her head, a not-so-pleasant smile spreading across her face.